Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. It's Tuesday, September 28th. Hope you're all having a good week. We're on week 3 of the podcast here on YSN. On the show today, to my right, Matt Morrison. No one to my left. I'm Alec Caberna. Let's get into this thing. Your question of the day from yesterday. Who leads the all-time series between divisional rivals Green Bay and Detroit? That one, Green Bay, obviously. I think if anybody got that wrong, they haven't been watching football for the last, 70 years?
Yeah.
Question of the day for today, September 28th. Who holds the career NFL record for highest yards per catch average? Your options: Anquan Bolden, Michael Irvin, Homer Jones, Jerry Rice, or Paul Warfield. Tune in tomorrow to see if you can get that one right. And Matt, let's get into the show here. We're going to preview what we're talking about here first. We're going to talk a little bit our high school recap. Game of the century lived up to the hype between Mogadore and JFK. Our college football rankings released here from the podcast. The Monday Night Football game from last night. Panthers versus Texans, Titans versus Colts, Falcons versus Giants. And we're going to get a bigger college football segment in here today. Talking the Baylor, Iowa State upset. West Virginia and Oklahoma, Georgia Tech's upset over UNC. Iowa nearly getting upset. And the battle between Michigan and Rutgers. Greg Schiano's putting something together in Jersey. And then talking Brady's homecoming and a big deal with too many nuggets. So, Matt, let's get into this here with high school recap for us. Mogadore, JFK finished up 16-14 thanks to a late field goal by Mogadore there in the fourth quarter in a game that it was really back and forth, battling the whole way. We thought JFK was going to win it. They blocked the PAT, so the score was 14-13. They had the lead there in the third quarter. After putting up 14 points in the third quarter, they got shut out in the rest of the game. But that third quarter, they came out of the locker rooms. They were dominant, and it looked like they were about to take the second half by storm. But then Mogadore's defense closed right on in. Both these teams have a good chance of going the distance in the playoffs this season with the way they played this last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, both sides were dominant. This Mogadore ended up coming out on top. I mean, it's a game when you put one of the two best teams together and they play each other, one's gonna have to lose, and it just ended up being Warren JFK. You know. I
mean, you obviously saw with the Massillon-Washington-Fitch game as well. You put two great programs out there, and one team came out with the victory. Same thing here. Fortunately, both YS team lost this week in the two biggest games going on. But, it was a gutsy performance they put in by this JFK squad. They took it to a team that's a division ranked higher than theirs. So, it's a smaller school as well. This was a battle of small schools going into it. Both sides knew what was at stake here. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Pro Logo and what he's building in this JFK Catholic team to be able to take it to one of the most winningest head coaches in high school football history for the state of Ohio and make it a two-point game coming down the stretch. I think the fact that it was this close at that point in the game goes to say just how good this JFK squad is and how good they're going to be. Yes, they have a few guys that are going to leave next year, but this is a team that you can see the young guys coming in. They're building up something here. This isn't going to be a one and done season like they were in the state championship last year. This is a team that is good enough to get back there once again this year. And what it looks like from what we saw is a team that probably has the chance to get back there year after year. This isn't going to be a one and done show pony here. This is a contender and hopefully a perennial powerhouse here that they're building up in Warren.
Yeah, I sure hope so because I like their young players. I mean, you look at that sophomore running back, that was really good. He broke out in some big runs, so they have a team for the future. So, like you said, they're just building and building. They're not going to be one and done. They're going to be back. They're going to be around, year after year.
Well, let's hope so. And on the slate for JFK coming up next, they are 3-2. They got another hard matchup in Rootstown against the 4-2 Rootstown, obviously, the Rovers, in what should be a pretty fierce matchup there. Rootstown, another one of those East Akron teams that has been up there and likes to cause problems and likes to win a lot of football games. And hopefully that's one JFK can come out on top with. But nonetheless, great game. Matt and I will be previewing our upcoming game on Friday between
Brookfield and Newton Falls.
Newton Falls just got smacked around, and Brookfield's been on something. So we'll see if Falls can pull the upset. But it's an uphill battle. We'll talk about that coming up this Friday. Let's get into the college football playoff rankings. For us, in first place, Alabama in second, Oregon third, Georgia fourth, Iowa. Our top four changing up a little bit. Georgia fell behind Oregon. I think you look at Georgia's schedule right now, and they don't really have any impressive wins. Their one win was over an offense that can't score in Clemson. Nothing else for them has looked impressive. They're going to have a tough game coming up against Arkansas. If they win that one, I think it'll probably get jumped back up to number 2. But at the moment, Oregon has the better win. I mean, they do. They have looked more impressive despite that close game they had against Fresno State. They came out and took it to Ohio State in the shoe. And I think you look at that and you take that over the win for Georgia against the number 25 ranked Clemson right now. So, you move Oregon right up there. Fourth place, Iowa. They don't move from last week, but they're teeter-tottering. We're going to talk about their game later on today against Colorado State. And in the AP poll, Penn State jumped in front of them. We haven't done that just yet. Every team has that week where, they go into a trap game, and we're waiting for Penn State to see how they handle one of those games, against a lesser opponent. We've seen them play a lot of good teams so far, and at the moment, I think these two teams are pretty much neck and neck on where you sit them in the rankings, and this one could probably get flip-flopped either way. So
it's definitely going to be a battle when they face each other.
It's
going to go back and forth.
As we say there, Penn State ranked at 5. Arkansas taking the 6th spot, a huge jump up into the rankings from a team that none of us actually had in our top 10s last week, all the way up to 6th place there. They've had an impressive start to the season. If they take Georgia, I will have no problem putting them up in that top 4 and moving Georgia down out of there. I mean, Georgia needs this game, I think, more than Arkansas does in reality.
They do.
Georgia hasn't had that signature win so far in the season. This would be it, and they don't have Alabama on their schedule. The only big team they would face, I think, is Ole Miss and Florida. So, I mean, two teams that, yes, have looked good, but aren't going to be something you're putting on your playoff resume as, oh, here's my signature win. It's like, well, you didn't beat Arkansas and you didn't beat Alabama. So I think this is one Georgia really needs to get. And even if Arkansas loses, I don't know if that is enough to drop them out of the top 10 as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think they'll be dropped out of the top 10 if they lose, because that's a top matchup right there. You remember when Florida faced Alabama, I don't think when Florida lost, I don't even think they moved Florida.
Yeah,
it was that close.
Yeah, it was right there. So as long as this one's close and not a total blowout, this is, a good opportunity for Arkansas right now. Not moving, sticking in the 7th place this week, we have the Fightin' Fickles of Cincinnati. They have a huge game coming up this weekend against Notre Dame, and if they win that one, that's another team that you look at like, oh, this is a team that might be jumping up into the top 5, top 4 as well, and we're getting down to this part of the season. That top 4 is getting a little cluttered, and we're going to have to see who drops out here in the next week or two. It's a tight race up here at the top. Not so tight here, the 8th spot. Oklahoma, they're there. They haven't looked too great, and I think a lot of question marks so far for the Sooners on the season.
Yes.
In your personal ranking, you had them down at 9th. I had them at 8th. They ended up getting at 8th. And it's a hard 8. It's like, I don't know how much I like this team. We're still waiting on Spencer Rattler and what he can do for this squad. He hasn't shown much so far. Then down at number 9, we have the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. They came off a big win. We talked about it yesterday, their matchup against Wisconsin. They blew them out in that 4th quarter, blew it away, and took that game by a large margin there in the end. And it was good enough and impressive enough to show, hey, you know what, this is a team that Penn State only beat by 6. And they just put up, 30 points in the 4th quarter against them? Yeah. A lot of mistakes compounded there in the end. But, we got down to it. Notre Dame closed out when they had to. And I think it was an impressive win. It moves them up here into the 9th spot. And same thing we're talking about with Cincinnati. If Notre Dame comes in here and does the same performance they had against Wisconsin, against this Fightin' Fickle squad, who has been holding a top 10 spot for what seems like the last, 2 years in college football.
They've definitely been up there. But, Notre Dame, this is definitely a statement game, as it is for Cincinnati.
Right.
this cements them into where they're at. Are they a top team or are they not?
Yeah, we're going to preview that game coming this Friday, a top 10 matchup between Cincinnati and Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, they win that one, potential top 5 spot for them next week, depending on how the rest of the rankings will fill out. And at the 10 spot, rounding out our top 10 here for the second week of our Casual Sports Podcast top 10, Ohio State. You had them at 10, I had them at 9. This is a team that just played really well against Akron. It was Akron, though. They made a lot of changes on defense. They were playing zone instead of man, which is something that a lot of people around the country have been saying they need to do. This was not a team that is strong in man defense as they have been, going back 4 or 5 years. So they switched up this week against Akron. I think it made a good switch, and we'll have to see how C.J. Stroud does once he's back at the helm. If that shoulder's healed up for this week, I mean, it might be a tough week. We're talking about the Michigan-Rutgers game here later in the show, but that Ohio State-Rutgers game may look a lot closer than I think a lot of people will like, but it's one of those games that as long as Ohio State wins, it's good. Yeah. Because, that Michigan game, 2013, people look at Michigan like, oh, that's a really good team this year. And I said that. I thought this might be Michigan's best team they've had in quite some time. Since perhaps that double overtime game against Ohio State in 2014, I believe it was.
Something like that, yeah.
This might be the best team they've had in a while. And with the recruiting numbers going up for Michigan, it might be the start of something new. And you're looking at a 2013 win over Rutgers. Greg Schiano's putting together a program in New Jersey. And
can't sleep on them.
This game against Ohio State coming up this Saturday, I don't know if you even say it's a trap game for Ohio State. This might just be a Big Ten conference matchup that you have to look out for coming down the rest of the future of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about Maryland looking like they were going to take that spot as the next solid team in the Big Ten. And here comes Rutgers this year after getting, pounded by the Big Ten for the last, 4 years?
Something
4 or 5
like
years
that,
since they've joined. Finally, Greg Schiano comes back into town, has turned this squad around, and has a chance to upset Ohio State coming into week, what's this, week 4? Week 5? Something like that. So that is our top 10 here today. Let's get into things here. Monday Night Football. We know Mike slept nice and well last night as his squad, the Dallas Cowboys, defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 41-21. Just have to point out, my prediction was that close, man. I said 35-24. I was close.
Pretty close.
Both are within a one possession of that, so I'll take it, But I did say 2 touchdowns for Jalen Hurts.
You did.
So, Jalen Hurts didn't do too bad, but it was the 2 interceptions that I think really hurt them. Miles Sanders, they didn't really run the football at all in this game. I mean, the Eagles tried to keep it through the air. It didn't work. I think they were going up against a really strong defense that people might not think is that strong because teams have put up a lot of yards and stuff against them and stats. At the end of the day, so long as Dallas keeps winning, those stats don't matter against them. But you look at Jalen Hurts, 25-39. I think they passed the ball too much in this game. Obviously, they're trying to keep pace with Dallas, but you get into these games like this, you can't make it a shootout against a really good offensive team. Your defense has to show up, and they really didn't do that. I mean, Dak Prescott did whatever he wanted. Zeke had a big day. I mean, I said it. I thought those 2 backs were going to combine for over 150 yards. They did. They combined for 155 in this game. Zeke had 2 touchdowns. And really, I think Zeke returned to form in this game. This was the game he needed to have. 17 carries, 95 yards, averaged 5.5 yards per carry. So did Tony Pollard, who had 11 carries for 60 yards. And you liked what you saw out of that. Dak Prescott had a complete game, 21-26, 238 yards, 3 touchdowns for him. I was a touchdown shy there, but it is what it is.
But
you also like the defensive performance, and they played a great game defensively. Had 2 interceptions in that game, and it's hard to look at this game, look back on, and say, what did Dallas do wrong? I mean, they played a complete game. Yeah, obviously, you'd love to see CeeDee Lamb get a little more touches along with Amari Cooper, but they found somebody else. The guy, Dalton Schultz, a guy who we haven't called his name much this year. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. Cedric Wilson had the other one from Dak Prescott. And you look at this offense, and you're like, so even when their top guys are covered, they have finding guys that are going to somewhere else. That's something you love to see from Dak Prescott, a guy who just spent most of the last season on the injured reserve, coming back from an injury. Now here he is, completely back in form, able to find his secondary, third, fourth guys instead of always going to his number one. Sometimes you see injured quarterbacks come back and they're just trying to rely on getting that ball out of the pocket quickly and getting it to somebody that they trust downfield. Dak Prescott has come back and has not shown any sign of that fear.
He's not at all. And I talked about yesterday they needed to cement that run game. That's exactly what they did in this game. They got Zeke going, they got Pollard going. Then you got the new guy Schultz throwing it to him a couple of times. Add new players, put new players in your plays. Change it up a little bit, and that's how you win games.
Well, they won it. Coming up on the schedule next for the Cowboys, they'll be hosting the Panthers this Sunday, and what's looking like it's going to be a pretty good match. Got the 3-0 Panthers, 2-1 Dallas Cowboys, 1 p.m. on Sunday, and Carolina's looking dangerous. Dallas is looking dangerous. You look at the offense here, and they produced through these first 3 weeks. Obviously, 29 in the first game, 20 in the second, and now here in week 3, they're up to 41 points. Their defense, obviously room for improvement, but you do like to see the fact that their defense is holding teams right around 20 points, 20 to 30 points. If you can maintain that and this offense continues to roll along and improve on the season and stay balanced like we saw here last night, they're going to have no problem winning with the defense giving up 25 points a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the guys they have, Micah Parsons, and they got Gregory back. I think that was his name.
Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, for this one, not a good stretch coming for the Eagles. I liked what they did in that first 2 weeks against the against the Falcons and the Niners. They obviously only finished that 1-1. But I think I like what I've seen out of Jalen Hurts so far in the season. He looks like a good, consistent quarterback. He's shown rookie mistakes, but obviously, just his second year in the league and first year getting all the starting reps, you expect to see this. You want to treat this as his rookie season, despite the fact that, yes, he did get some snaps at the end of last year and finish out the season for the Eagles. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? You don't mind seeing a few of these growing pains with Jalen Hurts, a different style of quarterback than they've had going from Carson Wentz.
Yeah, Hurts is more, versatile. He can move out and he can throw down
the team rushing yards.
Yeah, so he can throw and he can run.
And it's becoming the quarterback that we're looking for now in the NFL. You go back just 7-8 years. We're talking about everybody coming out of college. You need to be a pocket style quarterback. If you're moving out of it, you're not going to be good in the NFL. That storyline has completely changed. And anytime we get to this talk about quarterbacks here, it's is he mobile enough to get out of the pocket? Because we're now talking about fantastic speed rushers coming off the edge. Now you have to be able to get out of the pocket if you want to survive in the NFL.
Yeah, you have to get out. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson does it. Now Hurts is doing it. Even Daniel Jones is doing it. So.
Daniel Jones is quick. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people look at him in his larger frame. He's 6'6" or something? He's up there, and he can move out of the pocket. He's got those long strides, and it helps to him. He only needs a couple of steps, and he's outside that pocket. It's like if you go into basketball, you see Giannis Antetokounmpo, run half the floor in 3 steps. It's like you get to that size, in a couple of steps, you're covering a ton of distance.
Yeah.
And you really need to be able to do that against a 6'7", 300-pound beast that can run a 40-yard dash and as fast as a running back. An upcoming schedule here for the Eagles. They host the Chiefs, which is going to be a rough matchup. But, Chiefs defense has been struggling. I think it's a game where Jalen Hurts and this offense potentially can find a rhythm and have a chance to make the Chiefs start 1-3. And, you really look at that and you're like, no way. Then after that, they have to go out to take on the Carolina Panthers, and we'll see what the Panthers do this week against the Cowboys, but it's going to be a tough matchup, I think, for the Eagles that week. Then they host the Buccaneers, which it's Tom Brady. They look good. We'll see what happens there. Then they got the Raiders after that. But, it's been a rough season so far, but I think they got a chance here to find their rhythm.
I think they do, yeah.
Next game up here, Carolina Panthers, Houston Texans. Panthers took it to Houston, won it 20-49. Sam Darnold looked perfect again, 23 of 34, 304 yards. Chuba Hubbard led the team in rushing yards second week in a row now over Christian McCaffrey. 11 carries, 52 yards for him. McCaffrey, just 7 carries for 31 yards. And, it was a good performance, I think, for this squad. They got Royce Freeman involved in running the ball as well, and he averaged 3.4 yards per carry. DJ Moore through the air was their leading wide receiver again, and they finally found a few other guys. It wasn't Chuba Hubbard leading the charge there in like second, third guy for the wide receiving core, and they got Terrace Marshall Jr. involved. I think that was a good one. Tommy Tremble had a big catch as well for 30 yards, and you look at the way this team was working out. Defense looked strong. I mean, yeah, they held a rookie quarterback, a third-rounder, Davis Mills, 19-28. He had a good day on his own, but he needs a lot more help from the running back position, and I think that's kind of something everybody knew about the Texans coming into this season. They didn't have a running back. They had Mark Ingram, 6 for 21, 3.5 yards per carry. David Johnson, the older back, only had 2 carries, 11 yards. Philip Lindsay, a guy that was great for the Broncos, 7 carries and just 5 yards. Brandon Cooks continues to be the only wide receiver for this team that can play consistent. He led the team again over 112 yards in receiving for him, and he made up all but 56 yards for this offense through the air. So, I mean, give credit to Davis Mills. I think he had a good performance, but this is a Houston Texans team that just doesn't have an identity.
No, they don't at all. Like you said, they need to run that ball more. I mean, really, the amount of times that they gave the ball to the running backs, I mean, it's abysmal. Run the ball. You got a rookie quarterback. Hand the ball off more because, I mean, they're going to figure him out pretty quickly if he's young and he's going to make mistakes. And the defenses are going to catch on to that.
And when you got a quarterback going 19 for 28, I think you'll take that. Obviously, there were a lot of checkdowns for the Texans, trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly, which I think was the right thing to do. The offensive game plan for Davis Mills was what they needed. It was just they couldn't get the run game involved, so they couldn't get away from the passing game, so they just weren't able to put together this game. We'll see if they can do it next week. They're up against a tough defense with the Bills next week. Then they have the Patriots after that, so back-to-back weekends. They face some, I think above-average teams going into it. Obviously, Patriots working with a young quarterback, but their defenses look good so far.
Yes, their defenses look pretty good.
And obviously, we talked about the matchup upcoming here for the Panthers as they take on the Cowboys and the Eagles in the next 2 weeks here. After that, they got the Vikings and Giants. I mean, right now, the Panthers, I think, might be in one of the best spots if they can take this game against the Cowboys to really get off to a super hot start in this season.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, Panthers are the Panthers are just cruising right now. They're riding Sam Darnold, and they don't even have Christian McCaffrey. He's out again, which is no surprise. But they're still finding ways to win so far. I mean, if they keep doing that, they're going to become dangerous. Just imagine when they add McCaffrey back. They're going to look even more dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, obviously get taken out of this game as well, but we'll see how they fare once Chuba Hubbard was a fantastic back in college. He obviously, his last season in college didn't live up to his initial 2 seasons of hype, where I think he was over 1,000 or 2,000 yards. His first 2 seasons, third season one that wasn't quite as high. Then his draft stock completely tanks off. He gets picked up though with a team that had a solid number 1 running back, and I think he's fit the program perfectly. He's fit the system, and he's taking advantage of the reps that he's getting right now. And you love to see that when you're bringing in a young guy like Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next game up here on the schedule, Tennessee Titans nearly got beat by the Indianapolis Colts. It was 25-16. Carson Wentz, he didn't make any mistakes. He didn't have any good moments, though. 19-37, just 194 yards. Once again, they really couldn't run the ball much. They did better than they have, though. Yeah. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor did what he needed to. 6.4 yards per carry. We'll take that. But I think they need to get him the ball more. Obviously, they were trying to split some reps there with Nyheim Hines. And obviously, you look at the 19-37, you see that, and you go, well, you can see where the offense struggled. They got in a lot of third and longs, couldn't complete passes, didn't have any long drives where you can really push the ground game.
Yeah, like you just said, I mean, they have to get that run game going because I mean, Wentz he's injury prone. You don't want to let him get hit first of all because you never know when he's going to go down with another injury.
And especially with the Indianapolis Colts who lost a quarterback in Andrew Luck. Yeah. He straight up retired before he hit 30 because of this offensive line.
Yeah. So I think you got to either throw it quick, become last year Ben Roethlisberger was like the number 1 quarterback of getting the ball out of his hands quick. So I think you got to become that quarterback, get it out of your hands quick, it when you're throwing it, and then otherwise hand it off to Hines and hand it off to Taylor. You know?
We'll see how they change things up. I think the Titans need to change a few things up as well. Ryan Tannehill, 18 of 27. Just 197 yards for him. He had 3 touchdowns, though, so not bad. But 2 interceptions for him, and that's the real reason you see the Colts getting 16 points in that game. And it wasn't, I think, the best game for the Titans. Derrick Henry did his part. 28 carries, 113 yards. He's averaging 4 yards per carry. And right now in the NFL, you'll take that. You look at those numbers, 113 yards. I think any offensive coordinator looks at that. So he's the 4.0 yards per carry, and they'll live with it.
Yeah, they're gonna have to live with it.
I mean, how many other guys you're getting in the league averaging 4 yards per carry and putting up over 113 yards like that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too many. Granted, he's had a ton of carries already on the season. What did we say last week? 35 carries, now 28 here. It's the guy nearing 75, 80 carries through the first 3 weeks of football. You almost start wondering, can he keep that up? Obviously, this is a big, muscular, huge dude. But at the same time, he's going up against big, huge, muscular dudes on the other side, and he's going to take a beating. If you're rushing this guy 200 times through the first 6 weeks, your odds of injury are going up astronomically compared to a running back that's getting, maybe 60 carries through the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to wear down if they keep using him that much. I mean, a good use him, like he's doing it pretty good for you, but sooner or later, I mean, the gas is going to start running out.
Sooner or later, they have to find somebody else on this offense to go to, or else they're not going to be in the playoffs for very long. I mean, This is a team I think will make it to the playoffs because they have shown they are good and they can run the ball, and Tannehill can compete when he needs to compete. But at the same time, they need to find somebody else on this offensive side who can do something consistently. A.J. Brown out again, and he couldn't really do anything this game. Their number one guy was Nick Westbrook, and Julio Jones was second. Neither one of them did very much. Just Nick Westbrook over 50 yards with 53 on 4 receptions and a touchdown for him. There needs to be more in this offense. And we'll see if the Titans can find that coming up here. They'll have a few good games to get to do that before they take on the Bills in 3 weeks. They got the Jets this weekend and the Jaguars next. So 2 games where that offense should be able to find the rhythm. And potentially, if they can blow this thing up by halftime, can get Derrick Henry some rest and not have to use him 30-plus times a game.
Yeah.
This is a game you go in here, you're looking, all right, I'm going to drop that from 35 or 28. I'm going to drop that down to 19, 20 carries. And get somebody else involved. Let's not use him in this game because we don't need him in this game.
No.
I don't think they needed him as much as they did in the Colts game. So this is a chance to rest him up before you have a stretch consisting of the Bills and Chiefs, because that's when you're going to need Derrick Henry to be there the most. Then after that, they'll get the Colts again. We'll see how that fares the second time around before hosting the Rams, or going down to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. So we'll see how these next few weeks work out for the Titans here. And on the flip side, Colts, they need to find an identity soon. They got the Dolphins coming up this week against their former quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, who had a pretty good game this past weekend. And the Colts, I think they need to find their identity. It's got to happen sooner than later. Carson Wentz, if he wants to be the guy in Indianapolis, he has got to perform more than he has been so far. They have the Ravens coming up after that, and then the Texans. So, this is, I think, a good stretch for them. I think they'd probably lose to the Ravens, but the Dolphins and Texans are 2 teams that I think they have a chance against. So, they can avoid an 0-4 start next week.
Yeah,
and they nearly already beat the Rams. So, the 24-27 game, they were just short of the Seahawks, just like they were just short of the Titans this week. This isn't a bad Colts team. They just haven't found that identity to put together a complete game.
They haven't found the rhythm. Yeah, once they find their rhythm, I mean, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be a pretty good team.
Next up here, some bad football. 2 winless teams had to go at it. You knew somebody had to win. It was ugly to watch, but they finished it out. Falcons picked up their first win. Giants fell to 0-3. It pretty much was the fourth quarter or bust, as the score of the fourth was 10-8. Falcons took it and the game as well. Matt Ryan for the Falcons, not too shabby on his part. 27-36, 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mike Davis on the ground, 12 carries for 50 yards. And Cordero Patterson, the leading wide receiver, with 82 yards, no touchdowns for him. And, it was a low-scoring game. Daniel Jones didn't have to try too hard to complete passes. 2 terrible defenses they were going up against, and still neither side could score. Saquon Barkley, I still don't think looks like he's the guy. He had a better performance, 16 carries, 51 yards. just 3.2 yards per, carry. And obviously, you go back, we talked about it, I think earlier this week or last week, 3 yards per carry used to be what you needed to do in the NFL. Now it's 3.54 yards per carry. That's where you have to be getting to be an elite running back in the league. I mean, you have to be getting up there more than 3.2. You expect any guy you're bringing up from college or out of free agency to get you 3 yards per carry. If you want the elite money, if you want to be that elite running back, if you want that status, you have to do more than 3.2. He got the touchdown, yes, but obviously 16 carries. You look at that, I'm like, 16 carries. I need you to get up there near 80 yards. Give me 80 yards on that.
100 yards.
Right, and you have the chance there. If you get 80 yards for him, you just give him another 30 yards on that stat. Could be another touchdown and the win.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know what to think about him. He had that great first year, and then he's just been prone with injury. And I mean, that's part of it. He's still recovering from that. I mean, I don't think anybody really fully recovers from, an ACL. I mean,
I haven't.
Yeah.
I know. I tore my ACL freshman year. It's my junior year now, and it's still rough sometimes.
Yeah. So it's just a nagging pain.
Doesn't matter the amount of therapy you go through or stretches they make you do every now and then. That thing tightens up on you, and it hurts.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy road coming up here for the Giants. They have to go into New Orleans this weekend against the Saints. Then they have to go into Dallas against the Cowboys. Then they host the Rams, then the Panthers, then go into the Chiefs, then host the Raiders, then go into Tampa Bay, then they get the Eagles and Dolphins in back-to-back games. But that's not until late November, early December that they'll see that. So it is a rough stretch coming up for the Giants. And there's a lot of talk about, bad quarterback play and winless seasons. We saw one not too long ago in Cleveland. Is this the year we see one in New York?
Maybe.
They have a rough patch coming up here, and frankly, you look at this schedule, the only winnable games, potentially Eagles and the Bears. I mean, it doesn't look good right now for the Giants unless they can find something. And if Saquon Barkley can return to form, then they stand a chance of not going winless. But Daniel Jones can't do this all on his own. They need something else in this team. They need better defensive play, too.
I totally agree that Dexter Lawrence, who was it, Dexter Lawrence? I know, they had a couple guys hurt on defense, and they didn't bring them back. And, I mean, they have some good guys with potential. I mean, Jabril Peppers was a beast at Michigan. Let's see that here. And he even showed it a little bit when he was in Cleveland. Let's show it here when he's with the Giants. Come on.
It was a questionable move, and Cleveland made the move to get rid of Jabril Peppers, but honestly, I think it's worked out for Cleveland's defense.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the defense now for Cleveland, you're like, well, yeah, okay, I think that works. I think they're good.
They're good.
All right, let's move into college football here. A big upset. Ring the new bell. We had an upset this weekend. Baylor Bears now 4-0 on the season, upset the ranked Iowa State Cyclones 31-29. Baylor took the top 25 spot now as they're ranked 21st in the nation according to the AP poll. And it was a good game for Baylor. Brock Purdy on the other side. I mean, it wasn't terrible for him, but you want more out of that squad. And Breece Hall, number one running back in the nation, he showed you why. 27 carries, 190 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him in that game. But Brock Purdy, just 22 of 33, 263 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. I mean, this was a game that was so back and forth. It was right there down the stretch, and both sides played a great game. I mean, you look at this one for Baylor, and it was their defense that won this football game for them. 2 passing touchdowns for Gary Bohannon, 14-19 with 164 yards on the ground. Abraham Smith, just 10 carries for 47 yards. Gary Bohannon had the next 10 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, not a ton of yards here for this offense of Baylor, yet they still come out with the win. They didn't have any big, stats from a single wide receiver, just one man over 50 yards. It was super balanced. The defense just came to play that day, and, they did enough to win it at the end of this ball game.
Sure did.
And, you got to give credit to your kickers in this one. He had the one field goal, and he nailed it. He gave them the 3 points. He gave them enough to win this game in the final stand. Fourth quarter, they were outscored 6-3, but it came down to just 3 points, and they took it. And, Baylor Bears now looks like the team to beat here in the Big 12. And I think we have the battle of the Big 12 potentially here coming up this next weekend. Baylor Bears, Oklahoma State, both teams 4-0. Both teams ranked 21 and 19. This game could just be the game that decides who's going on to take on Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's a game that's on Baylor's schedule, so we don't even know what we're getting out of Oklahoma yet on the season. This game coming up for Baylor and Oklahoma State could be the game that decides the Big 12 here. And you look on the other side for Iowa State, they have got to turn this around. I mean, they have a better schedule coming up. Yeah, I mean, they started off with a close win against UNI, which was one that we have predicted on the upset because UNI almost beat them 2 years ago to start off the season. Then Iowa State still ended up running it down and had a good season out of it. Then number 5 Iowa comes to town, and it's a close one there. And they finally get their easy opponent in UNLV. They win that one handily. Then they come in here probably a little bit too high after UNLV win. Can't hold it to Baylor, and Baylor looks good. You look at this upcoming schedule for Iowa State. They have Kansas in what should be a winnable game. Kansas State, though, a team that was just ranked after losing. But they did lose, so they're out of that top 25 now. Then they have number 19 Oklahoma State. Then a West Virginia team that I think might actually be pretty good this season. We like to see West Virginia back on the up and up. Then they have Texas, who we just saw put 70 points up on Texas Tech. So we know the offense is at least there, and you were expecting that from Steve Sarkisian. Once he got that offense rolling, it's going to be an offense that's going to be very hard to stop once they find that consistency. Then they have that Texas Tech team we just talked about, Oklahoma in one of their final games, and then TCU to finish it out. So Iowa State, probably out of playoff contention, still searching for a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, I think that there's, like you said, they're still looking to get into the New Year's Six Bowl. They're just up and down every year. It seems like they haven't really gotten back since what West Virginia with Will Greer, right? That's probably the last time that they were any good. Yeah.
Well, let's get into that West Virginia game then. As they took on Oklahoma, nearly pulled the upset 16-13, and caused a lot of doubt within the Oklahoma organization and the AP poll, obviously coaches poll. Oklahoma dropped in every single poll after this game, and this is a 2-2 West Virginia Mountaineers squad that lost to Maryland week 1 and then obviously lost here against Oklahoma. They beat Virginia Tech, as Virginia Tech was ranked number 15th. Virginia Tech no longer ranked, but it was a good game at the time, and West Virginia came out on top. They come out here, nearly upset Oklahoma.
And that's why I was kind of edgy about where I put Oklahoma in the poll. They almost lost to West Virginia, and if you look at their schedule coming up, I think they have. They have K-State this week, and then Texas, TCU. The next 4 weeks, I think, for them looks okay with K-State, a team that was ranked. I think Oklahoma should handle that one. I'm interested to see how they fare against Texas. If Texas can maintain their offense, TCU should be a winnable game along with Kansas. You hope the Texas Tech game is winnable, but then to end the season, Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. Yeah,
3 of the best teams here in the Big 12 to finish out the season. That's the meat and potatoes of this schedule. Yeah. You get down to it, these are the 3 games here. You win the rest and hope you may only drop one of those, because you can only afford 1 loss if you're Oklahoma, because you need to have 1 loss in a Big 12 championship. So you have to make sure coming out of the season, Oklahoma's ranked at least in the top 2 of the Big 12 to make it into that Big 12 championship game and potentially punch their spot into the college football playoff. I think with the amount of ranked teams, the Big 12 has a chance to get a team in there, especially with the way the SEC is looking right now. I think the SEC is going to eat each other up and potentially damage their own chance at a college football playoff of 2 teams.
Yeah, I definitely, it's up for question right there.
Well, Oklahoma Sooner Spencer Rattler, he was okay, 26 of 36. You'll take that, 256 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Okay. Everyone's calling for Spencer Rattler's head. Where's the running game? Kennedy Brooks had 5 carries for 17 yards. Eric Gray had 12 carries for 38 yards. I'm not putting this this close game on Spencer Rattler. He did his job for the most part. He did what he needed to on this offense. If you can't run the football in any facet of college football, you're not going to win football games.
Spencer Rattler's just doing just enough to get them the wins. He's doing it all.
Right. And I think West Virginia, in the same count, doesn't win this game because they couldn't run the football either. Neither squad really ran it very much. And Jarrett Doge started the game out for this West Virginia squad, 20 of 29, 160 yards and an interception. They had to bring in Garrett Green. He went 3 of 4 for 19 yards. And you look at it like, man, if they just had a little bit more consistency, I think this is a team that wins it. They had their only touchdown in the first quarter. and so did Oklahoma. Rest of these points came off of the, kickers. So kickers won the football game, and that's not what you're talking about here in Big 12 football. And that's why everyone's talking about Spencer Rattler potentially getting moved on to the bench here. And I think if Spencer Rattler gets benched, he hits the transfer portal this offseason.
I think so too.
Because I think there's a lot of teams that would love to take Spencer Rattler, a guy who is very high in the draft stock.
Yeah, they are. Honestly, I'd like to see him stay at Oklahoma. I think that's their next guy. I hope they don't bench him. But still, you got to give him some help. You got to get that running game going. You got to get the receivers going. They used to have, a couple years ago, their run game and receivers were outstanding. They had Marquise Brown and Trey Sermon even was at Oklahoma for a little bit before he went to Ohio State. They had the team.
They don't know what happened there. We'll see if Lincoln Riley can turn things around. But how about this on our slate? Georgia Tech. We called it, pulled the upset, and have now unranked the UNC Tar Heels after the offense puts up 59 points in back-to-back games for UNC. They get held to just 22 here against Georgia Tech. And, this GT's team is something that they are a huge question mark on consistency. They lose to Northern Illinois. Go blow out Kennesaw State. Then they nearly upset Clemson. And now here they come and wreck UNC. You look at them, it's like, if they had any consistency on the season, this is a team that's 4-0.
Yeah.
And is probably ranked in the top 10. Or top 15 at least. With the win over both ranked UNC and ranked Clemson. You look at this schedule for Georgia Tech, and they have the chance at this point in the season to be ranked. It's just if they win the Northern Illinois game, they're probably in the top 25.
I would have to put them in the top 25, and they could still make the top 25.
Oh, plenty of time,
25.
Yeah, of course. You look at their upcoming schedule now. They got Pittsburgh, Duke. The Virginia Tech game might give them some difficulties. You look at the Miami-Florida game. You like Georgia Tech in that one. Boston College, I think, will give them some difficulties. But the final 2 weeks at Notre Dame and then hosting Georgia in the Battle of Georgia.
That'll be a game. That could be a pretty good game if they start, if they...
And it could be a very important game for the SEC and potentially getting multiple playoff teams in. If you go in this final week and you have a one loss or an undefeated Georgia, and now they lose to Georgia Tech in that final week, you're now looking them into. They're still going to be in the SEC championship game, probably against Alabama if they go in with just one out of conference loss. But now you look at that. If Georgia was to lose in that SEC championship game, they're now a 2-loss team to Georgia Tech and Alabama. Most likely, with the way this season's filling out, we have a lot of good teams right now sitting in that top 10. SEC loses their chance at 2 teams.
Yeah.
So, Georgia Tech right now has the chance to completely shake college football as we see it right now. They nearly did it with Clemson, and I think they kind of put the doubt within Clemson and within the voters, and that's why Clemson now sits at 25. It's because they haven't been able to produce. They didn't win against Georgia. They barely went against Georgia Tech, and obviously lost to NC State. You look now, Notre Dame in the final 2 weeks of the season, if they pull that against an undefeated Notre Dame team or even a one-loss Notre Dame, they shake college football, knock Notre Dame out of the contention, then they can do the same thing to Georgia the next week. It'll be tough, but Georgia Tech can do it.
Yeah, and they can't get too far above their heads right now. I know they're probably looking at those 2 final games, but you just got to keep looking ahead. You got Pitt next week, focus on Pitt, then focus on the next team and the next team. Okay? Then start focusing about Georgia and Notre Dame when it comes up.
Right, and we look at UNC right now. They got a good 2 weeks coming up here, but on the other hand, Duke isn't looking too bad. They have 3 straight wins after the week 1 loss to Charlotte, and it was probably the worst game of their season so far. Since then, the Duke Blue Devils, basketball blue blood, is 3-1 on the season. If they go in here against UNC, a team that was ranked, go 4-1, we're talking about Duke here in the ACC now for football, which is something I don't think anybody was thinking we were going to be saying at this point in the season. Everyone had UNC starting as a top 10 team in the country under Sam Howell.
And he hasn't really. They were talking about him for the Heisman, and he really hasn't turned out to.
He did his job though in this game. 25-39, 360 yards, 2 touchdowns. No ground game though for the squad. I mean, Ty Chandler, 17 carries, 48 yards. And you
Sam
just get down to
Howell
it. You need
too.
more offense in this ball game, and that helps. If you get the ground game going, you slow down the other person's offense as well. So
I think he got caught up in too much of the hype a little bit, and he figured like, oh, I gotta do it all by myself, and hey, there's 10 more guys that are around you that are gonna help you win on that offense. So trust them, hand the ball off to them, let them do their thing too.
And I think as much as you look at the offensive side of this, you have to look at the defense. For UNC, 45 points here against a Georgia Tech team that honestly hasn't put up a ton of points. I mean, they only put up 21 against the MAC opponent. They put up 45 against an FCS team. Then against the fellow ACC opponent, they put up 8. And now here they come out against UNC and put up 45. You have to look at the defense right now for UNC. That is where their biggest question marks are. All the momentum is lost on defense with that big second quarter for Georgia Tech. They had 13 in the second. Then you come out of halftime, the most important quarter, the third quarter, sees momentum out of the half. They couldn't do it. Got outscored 14-7 there. Now you're looking at what was a one-possession ball game and a 13-7 game is now looking at as a 27-14 game. And you're like, well, now we're down 2 possessions. And then the fourth quarter gets blown up even more for Georgia Tech. They put up 18. They continue to improve in every quarter, and that is something that shows UNC did not make the adjustments on defense to stop this offense whatsoever. Next game up here on our slate, nearly pulling the upset, was the 1-3 now Colorado State Rams. Iowa Hawkeyes struggled in this game. They won it 24-14 though, and it took a strong second half for them. They outscored Colorado State 17-0 in that second half, but this was an Iowa squad that was down 14-7 at halftime. You look at this and you go, man, this was almost the upset of the season so far, potentially. And Spencer Petras, I mean, 15-23, 224 yards. You'll take that with the 2 touchdowns and the interception. I mean, Iowa, I think, did their job on offense. You want a little bit more out of Tyler Goodson. You need some more yards on the ground to just give the pass game a break and slow down your opponent. I mean, it's kind of the same stuff we're talking about here, but, Iowa played well enough to win. And at the end of the day, that's what matters in college football. Because if you get down to the end of the season and you're undefeated, you're going to the Big Ten championship game, no one's looking back at this Colorado State game, 24-14. If they pull off the rest of the season and they look just fine, no one's looking back at this game.
No. And their defense really helped them out right here. I mean,
that second half for the defense is what won this game.
Yeah.
So, when you look at it here, Todd Centello, 16-30, 155 yards and a touchdown for Colorado State. And this is an Iowa squad that hopefully they can continue this rhythm. They might have a difficult matchup. 4-0 Maryland this week in Maryland. And, anytime a team's going into Maryland, it becomes kind of a trap game. Maryland has a rough schedule as well coming up. And we'll see how they fare in these next 2 weeks. If Maryland upsets Iowa, then they have Ohio State in the shoe. If they can win both those games, go 6-0, this is a team that goes from unranked here to start this week to a team in the top 15.
Oh, definitely.
If not top 10. I mean, they would have wins now over 2 top 10 opponents. They could very easily jump up the rankings just like that. So we're looking right now at the Big Ten, and we were talking Georgia Tech a minute ago, shaking up the ACC in college football. Maryland can do the exact same thing in these next 2 weeks.
And Rutgers is right there as well. If they really bring it to Ohio State and just somehow pull this off, you got to put them into the rankings.
Right. You look at Iowa right now; they have a tough road. I mean, they have Maryland this week, Penn State next, Purdue, who's always a scary team, then in Wisconsin, then in Northwestern, then against Minnesota. And they finish out the season Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, Nebraska. You like that stretch. So Iowa needs to win now, and then they can probably ride out the season pretty well. Go into a Big Ten championship game against potentially Penn State, Ohio State, State, or Michigan. Big Ten East is wide open. Big Ten West is getting sealed up pretty quickly. I mean, you look at this race out right now in the West. Technically, Purdue's in first place. They're also 1-0, but they're 3-1 on the season. You look at everybody else in the Big Ten West, it's not looking good so far. At the moment, it's really between Iowa and Purdue right now, which I'm not sure anybody saw coming with Purdue losing Rondale Moore to the draft and, losing that game against Notre Dame 13-27 and struggling hard against Illinois in a 13-9 game. At the moment, the Big Ten West is Iowa's to lose.
Yeah.
We'll see how things shake up there. Last Big Ten game, we'll talk about Michigan Wolverines, Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Both teams were undefeated. Somebody had to lose. and it turned out to be Greg Schiano's Scarlet Knights. They dropped it 13-20. Michigan in this game. They took the first half, didn't need to do anything the second. Cade McNamara didn't throw too much, 9-16, 163 yards there for him. They relied on the ground game to get things done. Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum combined for over 100 yards in this game, with 2 touchdowns for Haskins. Haskins is one of the premier running backs in the Big Ten, and I think he's a name that gets forgotten sometimes with injury problems that he's had. He's not the starting back for the squad, but he's probably a guy that they can rely on more than Blake Corum in the big moments. Because Haskins, I mean, you even look at his games against Ohio State and Penn State last season, or last few seasons, he's looked really good in those games, and his ability to shine in big moments is something Michigan needs. They haven't had that playmaker in big moments for quite some time. I mean, you look at this offense, it was Jabril Peppers. Then you have to go back probably to 2011, 2012 with Devin Gardner. And in the moment, who can I rely on? And this is a Michigan team that I think has struggled to find that guy, especially at the quarterback position. They haven't had that quarterback who can make that play since Devin Gardner.
No, they have. Devin Gardner was, he was versatile as well. He spread the field. The past couple quarterbacks have just been, stuck in the pocket too much, and they get hit.
Well, we'll see here how the Big Ten shakes out. We'll preview some upcoming games here later this week on the Casual Sports Podcast. Let's get down to our final few headlines here with 9 minutes. Tom Brady's return to Foxborough, and what might be a massive game coming up here. And Tom Brady said, you know what, this time going back to New England, this isn't the time to reminisce, this is the time to go in and win some football. Yeah. I know how to win in Foxborough, that's what I plan on doing. And I mean, this is Tom Brady, who we know is one of the best quarterbacks, or one of the best quarterbacks of all time, perhaps greatest football player of all time, statistically saying. Yes. I mean, you look at it, there are probably some guys you could say are better football players than him, but at the end of the day, Tom Brady has had what it takes to win. And at the end of the day, winning is all that matters. Yep. Stats are fun, and the shiny plays are cool to look at. But at the end of the day, the best picture you can have, the best stat you can have, is that Super Bowl trophy, and he's got more than anyone. So, I mean, you look at Tom Brady on this, coming into this game. We'll obviously preview this game come Friday, but the return to Foxborough is huge.
It's huge. Whew.
Final headline here. Too many Nuggets to deal with for Denver. Michael Porter Jr. has agreed to a 5-year maximum extension to up to $207 million. I'm not sure I agree with him getting this big payment. I mean, I don't think he has shown that he deserves that. He's led the team with 3-pointers. He had 170 last season. But you look at his stats coming off this last season. 23 years old, 19 points per game, 7.3 rebounds. Is that enough for a max extension here in the NBA? I mean, we're looking at who deserves a max extension. Because right now, I think the NBA is just handing them out to whoever wants it. It's kind of what it seems like. If you want a max, you'll get a max. Yeah. Teams are just too focused, I think, on keeping people that they're letting the players run the league. And I think they're letting it kind of fall apart too much. I mean, we're going to come up here, and I think this is going to be what ruins small market teams. Look at Cleveland. They're coming up with a big decision on Colin Sexton's contract, on a max extension deal for him. He has the potential to get a huge contract from Cleveland. The question is, can Cleveland afford to keep him? Now you look at Michael Porter Jr. coming off of a 19.7.3 rebound season, and Colin Sexton's taking that to the boardroom and going, hey, my stats are better than that. Yeah. Give me my money. Yeah. And Cleveland's going to have to make a tough decision. I mean, they have a lot of rookies, which favors them, and they're going to lose Kevin Love's contract in, after this season or after next season?
I think it's
this season.
I think it's this season.
He had, 2 years, $60 million after that started last season? So I think they got 1 year left on his. So, I mean, it could be the point they either move Kevin Love's contract down after that in a re-signing process, or he becomes a free agent, goes somewhere else, or just straight up retires, which he probably should with the injuries adding up and just sitting on the bench. And it doesn't seem like there's any free agent market for him. We're coming down to that point. They need to get rid of Kevin Love's contract, whether that's him retiring or not re-signing him after this next, contract period for him.
Or giving him a pay cut.
Right. He's already said he's not taking the cut. I mean, smart decisions by him. I wouldn't take the cut either if I'm getting paid $30 million to sit on a bench year after year.
Yeah.
But you're coming down now. Sexton's going to want big money. Garland's going to want big money. You look at some of the other guys they brought in. Jared Allen he's on a big contract and he's going to want more.
Yeah.
If you tell him he's the starting guy for you, he's going to demand starting money.
Yeah.
You look at Isaac Okoro in a couple years. He's probably going to want money if he becomes the guy. Markkanen's going to need money. I mean, you look at this squad; they have a lot of players that could be top guys.
Yeah.
And now with the market here for contract extensions, everybody getting the max. Small market teams like Cleveland cannot afford this. Minnesota can't afford this. I mean, you look at what they have right now with Karl Anthony Towns. Who's their point guard right now?
Minnesota?
Yeah.
Was it Jeff Teague?
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
But you look at them with Karl Anthony Towns. They have Anthony Edwards there as well. And
I know his name. Ohio State.
D'Angelo Russell?
Yeah.
Okay. So D'Angelo Russell there. I mean, Anthony Towns and Russell are two massive contracts. You look at them coming up now. I mean, they already have a large payroll going on there, having to re-sign Anthony Edwards, who looks like he could be a top player in the league at some point in his career. He's going to want top money. It is becoming ever so much harder for a team to put together that big three that everybody strives for. I mean, you talk NBA, and what do you need to be successful? Every organization wants their big three.
Yep.
Teams cannot afford it. I mean, Cleveland afforded it for 4 years.
Yeah.
Then things fell apart because they couldn't afford it anymore. They didn't have the payroll to keep all those guys on and keep them all happy with bringing in a good solid bench behind them as well to come in and play when the starters needed out. When 90% of your payroll is going to three guys, you can't have them play 90% of the game and 90% of the season. It just doesn't work. So now we're getting down to the point. Michael Porter Jr. is not worth a max extension for Denver. He's not their best player. Max extensions should be reserved for your best players. I mean, I don't see what Porter Jr. has done to be a max extension guy in the league.
I've nothing worth bragging about. I mean, I don't even look at him.
The team hasn't been to the finals.
No, when you think of Denver, what do you think of?
Jokic.
Yeah.
This is Jokic's team. And Jamal Murray is there too.
Jamal Murray and Jokic. That's who I think of. I don't think of Michael Porter Jr. He's the side guy. He comes in and he does his job, and he scores for you. But a max contract?
At this point in his career, this was a guy that coming out of high school was a projected #1 guy in the NBA. Yeah. He has the back injuries at Mizzou. Yeah. It drops way down in the draft, and it was probably a steal for Denver. I admit that he was a steal for that team. Falling down to where he did, and he's shown that he has the ability to be a star in this league, but I don't think he's there quite yet. He's 23 years old. He's got a few more years till his prime. This was a chance Denver had to give him a smaller contract now, and then kind of reward him to stay with them once he reaches that max status, and then give him the money for it. This is especially a Denver squad that can't afford to go out spending max contracts on everybody when they're trying to build a contender around Jokic. You cannot. I mean, they wanted this to be their big three: Murray, Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. But you can't build that squad and then have nothing left. And you have those three guys. Who else can you afford to have if all three of those guys are on max contracts?
Exactly.
Well, we're going to finish things off. We forgot our award from yesterday, so we're going to give it out here at the very end of our show. Matt, this week's Beast of the Week.
It has to, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, it's got to go to Justin Tucker. The guy kicked a 66-yard field goal to win the game. I know it bounced off, but it still went in. That's unbelievable. It set the record. And Matt Prater he was going for a 68, but it ended up being a kick 6. But I mean, Justin Tucker, man, what a beast.
What a beast it was, and that's going to do it here for the show. Make sure to tune in back tomorrow to the YSN Casual Sports Podcast. Weekdays, 2 to 3. That's Matt. I'm Alec. We'll see you all next time, the Casual Sports Podcast. Maybe? Oh no, Matt, it's happening again.
Oh,
no one's here to cut us off. That's us, signing off. Sayonara. Adios. Peace out. Goodbye. You can tune off now.